Okay, hello everybody out there. Welcome to this meeting. It's the latest meeting by the Berlin Internationals Group. The title is COVID-19 Crisis, the Role of the EU and Left Answers. We have two speakers, both of whom are normally based in Berlin and both of whom are elsewhere because of COVID-19 and things. We have Judith, one of the speakers of our group. She's a political scientist focused on the EU. She's a member of the executive boards of both the Linke, the party Linke, and the European Left. And she's going to be talking in general about the situation with the EU. We've also got Dimitra Kyrillou, who is a Greek activist based in Berlin, has a background in anti-capitalist, anti-racist, and anti-fascist organization, and is currently in Greece. If people were here 2 weeks ago for the meeting, we had an overload of people and have changed software so that we hope that we keep everybody together. We did have a video of the last meeting, so you can see what happened. Hopefully, this time everyone will stay will stay with us. It means that the format has slightly changed. That you'll be able to hear the speakers. You'll be able to put a question. If you look at the page Left Berlin EU meeting where you're watching this meeting, bottom right there is a button Ask a Question. At any time you can post that and add a question which the speakers will answer. Well, how we'll start though is I'll take some small questions to both speakers. They will answer them, and then we'll open it to everybody else's question. So that's what we're going to do. Before we start at all, we've got a short 1-minute video of Ursula von der Leyen, who's going to explain little things from the EU perspective, and then we'll move on to the speakers. Roll video.
Our first priority is making sure that order is maintained at the Greek external border, which is also a European border. I'm fully committed to mobilizing all the necessary operational support to the Greek authorities. The Greek worries are our worries. Those who seek to test Europe's unity will be disappointed. We will hold the line, and our unity will prevail. Now is the time for concerted action and cool heads and acting based on our values.
So the first question goes to Judith, which is, last week we had Europe Day, and there's a lot of celebrations of the EU, and there's a lot of talk of solidarity and of unity, which we've just heard Van der Leyen talk about. The question to Judith is, how much solidarity and unity do you think we've actually experienced from the EU recently, particularly around Corona?
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Nice that you're watching. Well, I was expecting another video which shows von der Leyen talking at Europe Day regarding solidarity, but basically she made the same point, so it doesn't matter. I think that we see that this crisis is it's a severe test for the European Union, and it revealed once more the shortcomings, of this neoliberal entity. And I would say that the response by the European Union towards the corona crisis was not only late, it did not only come late, but it was insufficient, and it really lacked the feeling of solidarity and unity. What do I mean by this? I mean that already in February, Italy activated the so-called EU civil protection mechanism. It's a mechanism where states can, let's say, which they can activate. And Italy asked for support in medical material, and no single European Union country responded. Instead, we've seen very national answers. We've seen bans on exports and the closure of Schengen borders. So I would argue that the term or solidarity was rather in the beginning of the crisis a term on paper, but not practical solidarity. And you know that we as leftists, we say that solidarity is the tenderness of the people. And regarding this, I want to mention two issues. And the one is that we have seen international solidarity in times of crisis. We have seen international solidarity, for example, from China and from Cuba. Cuba sent an army, but not an army like we know, but an army of doctors, an army of health specialists. And by this, Cuba became one of the frontline forces in the fight against Corona. And this is, I think, the political message we need in this time: send doctors around the world, but not weapons. And in contrast to many other countries, this small island has a health system which is public, which is free. And so they were very well prepared to respond to this pandemic, also because they have experiences in the fights against Ebola. And I think we definitely need to applaud also this international solidarity. But also, I think what's very relevant and which should be a political demand for left people is to lift the sanctions we see right now. When I talk about Cuba, I mean the almost 60-year-old blockade by the US, which is very against international law, which is inhumane. And so I think that in this case, actually, we should follow the line of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Bachelet, because she was right in saying that we have to stop the sanctions. And last but not least, also when we talk about solidarity and unity, I would like to give you some numbers regarding Italy. Maybe you can show the slide we prepared. There you see it's a survey in Italy, and on the left hand side you see on the one hand side the friendship states and the enemy states. And you see that in Corona times, China is among this survey, Italian people said that 52% said that China now is the first friendship country of Italy, followed by Russia. On the other hand, we see that Germany, 45% of the people responded that Germany is the enemy state. So this is a bit also the political debate and the political reality we are now living in, that we see actually that Italian people thanked, in this case, the Chinese who helped them. And also another survey showed that 49% of Italian people would actually like to leave the European Union. So I think this is very worrying figures for the European Union, and not, as von der Leyen said in the video, unity and solidarity. I think now we are at a crossroads and at a time where unity at the European Union actually is not really there. And also, I would argue that the whole debate about Corona bonds, which we had, is also, let's say, dividing the countries, let's say the northern and the southern countries. So this is very, very striking. And the second point regarding solidarity, what I want to mention is that besides international solidarity, which was definitely there, we also see the solidarity by the people. I'm sure you know all the videos, all the social media where people are standing on balconies and making music, where neighborhood initiatives, activism is actually, grassroots activism is growing, where people are going door to door to help elderly people, to help people from the risk groups. So this is the second side of the coin, that we also see hope in this very difficult times. And I think this is also what solidarity looks like. And unfortunately, the European Union was not the entity giving this hope and this spirit. So I would respond to the question of solidarity, and maybe just a quick point on what the European Union actually did, like their measures. I can't go into detail now, but one thing they often mention now is that their European solidarity is treating patients from different countries. And there I just want to share one figure with you regarding Italy. The whole country of Germany, which is huge, 82 million people, 85 intensive care beds have been reserved in Germany, and now there are 44 Italian patients transferred to Germany. So this is a figure the European Union is often showing, and I would say this is very little, and the EU should do better. And another initiative, what I find very ridiculous, is that the European Union is celebrating itself for bringing people back home. Until today, we can see that the European Union organized around 250 repatriation flights, bringing home European Union citizens, now like 60,000 people, more or less. But I would argue this is very nice, and I guess the people are very happy, but it's double standards. On the other side, this European Union ignores that thousands of refugees are in the camps. And I would argue that, this is not the solidarity we want. This is not the democracy we want. And how does the European Union speak up to its own values? Now, Germany took 47 of these refugees, but I would argue this is, of course, not enough. So we finally, to sum it up, see that the European Union has big words about their activity, and obviously they did something, but they did it late, and the measures are insufficient. I don't really have the time to go into detail now when it comes to the economic measures. All in all, also, I would agree, it's small sums, and it's in form of loans. So it actually is a problematic for especially the Southern European countries. And I fear that we might see another Euro crisis after the Corona crisis.
Okay, this is a good opportunity to move to Dimitra, who's in another South European country in Greece, and one that was very affected by the last Euro crisis. The first question we have that we've heard a degree of praise about how the way the Greek government has dealt with the crisis. How much do you think this praise is justified, and how is the situation now in Greece?
Well, I was first of all thanks for this, and it's nice to be here. And but I will go straight to the point that it's a complete lie that Greece's good figures, good response was thanks to its government. There is a photo that I would like to share, Tom, the one from a demonstration on the 7th of May. Exactly, this is a picture from outside the Greek Parliament, where artists are complaining because so far they haven't received one single penny, one single dime for being without job all this time, and there is no prediction. What the government told them is that there's nothing for you in this job. There's nothing I can do for you. So actually, the government didn't care for the people. So the figures are really good, but we have to explain them. Greece has around 3,000 people infected and 151 dead people, which is really really good. This came because from the early coming of the crisis, the government imposed a lockdown. And here I would like to share it with people who from countries like the UK or the Netherlands or Sweden, where this herd immunity policies led to disaster. For those people, this sounds really good. But this came out of no humanism and of no good prediction or good programming. It was a pure pragmatism that the health system in Greece was decimated and insufficient, that there was no flexibility for any other policies except for lockdown. I will give you just a few figures, thanks to Comrade Sylvia, who has picked them for me, that one vital number, the intensive care units, but that by the beginning of 2020, the country, Greece, had 565 beds in the entire country for a population of 11 million people, which makes less than 6 units for 100,000 people against, I will not compare it with the 30 of Germany, but just 12 for Italy or 10 for Spain. And we know how bad Spain and Italy did with this infrastructures they had. And although the government by the end of March raised that figure to what 870 beds by expanding it and by hiring in incredible high prices from the private sector. This is the truth. This is still very little. And another figure is that the staff efficiency. They have admitted that they were short of 100,000 health workers in public hospitals. They hired 4,000 with fourth-month contracts. Some of them have not paid their April wages, salaries yet. So I want to try to say that Greece was always like that. I can only mention that there have been attempts for building a national health system in the blueprint of the English NHS. This attempt started in 1985, yes, under the first not right-wing government in Greece, the government of PASOK, and it foresaw an upgrading of public health. But this didn't last long. Then in the neoliberal politics of the 1990s and then the early 2000s, this attempt and this upgrading was undermined, and because the narrative was that the hospitals had to be enterprises. But the real blow came in 2010 when Greece was put under austerity politics and under memoranda. And as you all know, the European Union had a key part to this, unfortunately. So putting the country in a program so that its debt would be paid is a priority. This simply meant the demolishing of public health. I can mention 4 aspects that were appalling. First of all, that the actual disappearing of first-degree health provision like family doctors and health centers on a local and municipal level. The second was the closing down of public hospitals or so-called merging of hospitals and clinics, which actually meant that care units and beds were drastically reduced. The third was the reduction in staff through not replacing people who retired or not renewing the contracts for non-permanent staff. And there came also another aspect that the young people migrated to several countries. Many of them are with us in Berlin. And this means that in terms of youngsters, junior doctors or junior staff, there is understaffing. And last but not least, the level of austerity was such that at the slump of the crisis around 2012, hospitalized people had they had to bring their own bed covers and first aid materials like cotton when they got in hospitals. So that was that period that public health was denounced and defamed by the governments, and the private clinics started flourishing. There have been declarations by ministers like notorious Adonis Georgiadis, who said, "If I have to, I will shut entire hospital down." So, so this brings us to today that if Greece had to cope with this 565 ICU beds, there would be a disaster worse than Italy and Spain. So what it was obviously correct to lock down the country. Nevertheless, the measures had double standards, and there I have to explain that for example, construction sites. This is where I normally work, and factories went on working without controls, Courier services and the notorious call centers with 70 people in one room refused to provide cleaning material, masks, or even extra spaces, and it was the government turned a blind eye on them, and it was the workers who stood up and demanded keeping distances and measures. On the contrary, the first days of the quarantine, there was an emphasis on restrictions, like sending people had to send coded SMSs in order to leave the house, against high penalties of 150 or even 300 euros in the Easter weekend, and a lot of victim blaming on the TV shows, including by the government, including falsified videos showing disobedient Greeks bathing or crowded on the seaside. And this is on top of what happened to the people who lost their jobs. I cannot go far on that, but the compensations are really really low. It's people who lost their jobs permanently or temporarily get 800 euros for 1 month and a half, and from now on, the bosses have a lot of free choices to get people redundant or arbitrarily reduce their time of being employed with relevant cut in wages. And this is in a country where the wages have already been squeezed. So this brings us to this is the harsh truth. It had nothing to do with the far-sighted, gifted politicians and the humanitarian causes. And Greek people have fought in the past against this politics, and that's why they elected a left-wing government in 2015. All of you know what happened at that time. What we can say is that I tried to explain that it was a long procedure, that people resisted and also in political level. The left-wing government of Syriza wasn't the root of the problem, of course, but it had promised to inverse this situation in the public health, and it didn't deliver. And this is something that hangs over our heads even today.
Okay, before we go to the next question for Judith, just people at the bottom right of your screen, there's a red button called Ask a Question. If you have any questions, or also if you want to make a small comment, then please write something here and we'll put them to them. As said, because of the difficulties we were having last time, you won't be able to read it out loud yourself, but I'll read it for you. And that's the next question for you. There's been a lot said, and some of it needs unpicking as to what's really meant. There's a statement really that I want you to explain a little bit. It's from the Vice President of the EU Commission, Borrell, and he said there's a global battle of narratives going on. What's he mean, or what do you think he means by that, and what's happening here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true that Borrell, the High Commissioner, was quoted by saying this, and also actually we can see 2 weeks ago I've read that also the NATO president spoke about the battles of narratives. So I think it's a very interesting and striking issue you talk about. Well, what we can see on a European Union level at the moment is that the European elites are very worried about, they call it the aggressive propaganda by Russia, by China. And by this, they mean that the COVID pandemic would undermine the European Union, and that Russia and China and other states, but mainly these two, want to sow mistrust in the local populations toward the European Union. I think what's striking is often the European Union does not even tell one word regarding Trump, who actually said that corona is man-made and made in Chinese laboratories. So we really see a bashing towards specific countries, namely in this case, China and Russia. And of course, I would say that this has a geostrategic interest and background. Let me just say, refer to the EU argumentation. They say that to counter these negative narratives, the European Union should communicate about their big achievements, about their financial, about their medical support. You've just seen a picture. This was made by the European Union Commission, the one picture before, which actually said that France and Germany combined have donated to Italy more masks than China. So imagine we're living times where millions of people die, where we have severe economic and social problems, and this is the answer by the European Union Commission. I find it very ridiculous, and well, this is now the approach by the European Union to say we have to counter this aggression, and our aim and our way forward is giving the info on what we have achieved. Another thing they say is, for example, that most acts of solidarity by organizations, but also by professionals and individuals, take place far away from the gaze of cameras and reporters. And this is why the member states are now obliged to also report on what the European Union did and great achievements. Well, I would just say that this is pretty ridiculous developments. You can also see, and this was the second picture, where you see European Union versus disinfo. This is actually the website of the European Union. You can go onto the website. It's a public website by the European Commission's External Action Service. And there actually you see analyses and reports from disinformation trends. This is how they call it, and explanations on different narratives. Well, I would argue, first of all, what's the definition of a disinformation? For example, when you scroll and go to this website, you see some examples. And one example the European Union gave as a disinformation was, and this was the quote, "The European Union fails to deal with a pandemic." This, for example, was a disinformation. So I would argue, where does a disinformation start? When do fake news start? So this is very vague, and we have to see all of this, in my view, in an atmosphere which is more and more hostile, especially now towards Russia. Thanks to the coronavirus, we can say this, even though it sounds very ridiculous. The big war maneuver, Defender 2020, could not being held the way the European elites wanted it to be held. It was supposed to be the biggest war maneuver after the end of the Cold War. And actually, the aim was that within the European Union, within Europe, big troops go to the border of Russia. So this hostile atmosphere is now, of course, fueled by these initiatives by the European Union, and it's definitely a geopolitical approach that the European Union, they don't want that countries lean towards other, let's say, superpowers like China, like Russia, but they want the European Union to be the center. And just one last info on this. I think it's important to know that this website and all the disinformation campaign, it doesn't date back to 3 months ago, or even a bit some months longer when Corona came. No, it dates back to 2015, is when a so-called East Stratcom, East Strategic Communication Task Force, was established by the European Union, and this was mainly to counter the Russia's power and Russia's development. So this is just some background info, and this is something you would not hear so often. But I just want to let you know about these initiatives. If you have time, if you're interested, go on this website and make up your own mind. I just find that some information are really ridiculous, and I would argue that the European Union should invest more in people than in PR strategies, because now it's really not the time for these weird posts, but to concrete political actions which helps the people.
Okay, the next question to Dimitra, and about some of the people who do seem to have disappeared from the news. That for the last few years, the press has been talking about what they've called a refugee crisis, which has led to a large number of people being trapped on the Greek-Turkish border. A lot of these seem to have disappeared from the news, but they're still there and they're still living in absolutely miserable conditions. Or if you could say something about the situation for the refugees in Greece, what's happening to them and how are they being affected by the crisis?
Well, the news are not good in that front either. We saw before Ursula von der Leyen defending the Greek government in how it treats the crisis with Turkey, and this is also, for me, this is a shame, and I will try briefly to explain why. Von der Leyen was in the Greek-Turkish borders of Evros in early March, on the 3rd of March, and she delivered a speech there praising the Greek government, saying that you have to keep on fighting. At that time, there were even some hot, some change of real fire with the Turkish authorities. And what simply was happening was that refugees were coming from Turkey. The reason was that the Turkey who was supposed to be the guard there changed because of geopolitical. They had Erdogan is a regime with its own agenda, so they changed their mind and the agreements they had with the EU, and they just let people coming to the borders. And what happened there was that what was an agreement between Turkey and the European Union to keep 4 to 6 million of refugees and migrants outside Fortress Europe, under the agreement, of course, of the Greek government as a junior partner in that, collapsed at that time because of a change in geopolitical attitudes. And at that time, the Greek government actually they didn't fire only the Turkish troops. They fired against non-armed people. They robbed them. They killed them. There were horrible incidents. It was just a part of the puzzle, also in the Greek-Turkish antagonism in the area. But what I would like to bring to our attention here is that the EU was the Turkish government, the Greek government, and the EU were initiators and key problem of the situation at that time, and of the harsh situation of the refugees today in both countries. So to speak to what's happening in Greece at the moment is that the government is under pressure, transferred some thousands of the overloaded camps from the islands to the continental part of the country. But it was the right thing to do, but it was this means nothing better for the refugees, and I will explain why. From the figures is that something like 110,000 refugees and immigrants live in Greece. The majority is in the islands, and where the capacity of the camps is 1/6 of the people who are there. So it is just a drop in the ocean that they moved that correctly from Moria camp in Lesbos. They moved around 1,000 people. So instead of having 24,000, it has 23,000, but it accommodates 6. And those people were transferred to new so-called camps. They are horrible places in the middle of nowhere in northern Greece. We have checked some of them, or in other like around Athens. One is Malakasa, where COVID-19 has also appeared. So they locked them down and they made an extension next to it, bringing the people from the islands, and they call this a handling of the problem. So at the same time that the narrative of the government was we stay home to be safe, how could that appeal to people who were living like the refugees who were living in tents or in cramped rooms, and the whole thing was just a bluff, was just there is a great video that I would like to share after that with you, that the people what I would like to comment here is that the attitude of the Greek government under the agreement with the EU and temporarily against the agreement of Turkey, but this is as I tried to explain, is they are all part of the problem. The politics is disrespectful and pure repression towards the refugees. The refugees, nevertheless, face this with optimism and with resistance. So there was an uprising in 2 weeks ago, on the 22nd of April in Moria, where the people just came out and they made a demonstration there. And the video that I would like to share shows not there are two videos. One is from that day. The other was one handmade video trying to show how hard it is to stay safe in Moria. So I think it's a big challenge for the anti-racist movement in Greece, but also in Europe, to stop this and evacuate the camps, because there is a demand by the anti-racists and the anti-fascists in Greece to evacuate the camps and let people share apartments or even abandoned hospitals, which hotels, which because of the tourist crisis they are locked. There are solutions, but what actually is being made is in the opposite direction. And as Judith mentioned before, the moving of 116 underage to Germany and Netherlands, it is welcome, but it's also a drop in the ocean. It's not a part of the solution. So we have to keep that this situation has to change. Now we can see the video.
Okay. we have slight technical problems. I can't see the thing, but I take it it's over now. One last question from me to Judith and Dimitra. Then we'll go to questions and comments from the public. We've got one in already. If you'd like to ask something, or if you'd like to say something quickly, press the red ask a question button at the bottom right of your screen. But before we get to that, a last question to Judith from me. Judith, you're on the executive board of the European Left Party, and so you're in a good position to explain how the European Left has been responding so far. And do you think that there are any demands that the international European Left should be raising now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what's clear is that the crisis and the dealing with the crisis showed that, that this European Union is going in the wrong direction, and that the European Left Party, but also left parties on a national level, were totally right in criticizing, the European Union treaties, which are not suitable for a social, for a democratic, but also for a peaceful and ecological Europe. So I think, we are totally right, and we agree, even though on some specific issues we might differ sometimes, and we have debates. But it's of course the case that the core of these treaties are totally neoliberal, and they serve the system and not the majority of the people. And by saying this, the European Left Party, as you might imagine, also we had to cancel all of our events until August, and then we have to see how to proceed. So if I say, when I say cancel events, I mean all the events we do in the member countries, but also, for example, we always have a summer university, which is a great event and brings together activists from our different parties. All this had to be cancelled, but of course the working bodies are still connected, and now it's the time to really speak about what are our demands and how can we proceed. And the European Left published a text pamphlet with the title "Protect the People, Not the System. Change Politics Immediately," where you can already assume what's in the text. But of course, we totally think that the European Union needs a different path, and that also this corona crisis showed once again, as Dimitra already illustrated, the devastating consequences of austerity policies. And also referring to this, our left deputies in the European Parliament, for example, of course, their task is also to publish information so that people can work with it. And I want to share with you one thing the left in the European Parliament, for example, is now a study on the impacts of austerity policies. And one finding was that in the health sector alone, the European Union Commission asked member states, and this is a time between 2011 and 2018, and this study showed that the European Commission asked the member states, this is the second row in the picture, 63 times between 2011 and 2018 to cut spending or privatize parts of the health system. So we can clearly say that this policy has led to health systems being market-shaped and structured according to economic criteria rather than as required. And the neoliberal restructuring of health and other care systems, of course, is now hindering effective pandemic control. So I totally agree with the slogan, and this is also what we debate in the European Left Party. What was considered normal before the crisis is part of the problem, and we need a clear break from austerity, from privatization and deregulation policies. And when we now look to the different policy fields, I would identify four core key areas where to take action. Just very briefly, because we could have another whole session about this, but I would say, and this is not an order, this is just to mention the four key areas. First of all, defend jobs and social protection. So I would say that the Corona heroes, now everyone speaks about Corona heroes, like the people working in hospitals, working in supermarkets, and so on. These Corona heroes need more than applause. Of course, they need sustainable conditions, they need good salaries, and of course, the European citizens must not pay for the costs of this crisis. So there's now a nice picture. Yes, this one often published on social media. Make the rich pay for COVID-19, and that's exactly what the left has to demand and speak up for. And of course, we have to invest in public services. We have to fight that all employees are protected from dismissal, that collective bargaining is again strengthened, because we have seen that in especially the southern countries like Greece, collective bargaining does not exist anymore. So these are the small demands when we refer to defend jobs and social protection. The second pillar of the four I would briefly mention is, of course, we have to counteract the economic crisis, ensuring a recovery. And when I say a recovery, I also mean a green recovery, which is now a big topic on the European level, the Green New Deal and stuff. So there, we as the European left and also as left on a national level, when it comes to the economic measures, I think three issues are striking. First of all, we always say that the ECB needs to directly finance public investments. So we need to change the statutes of the ECB to make this possible. The second one, just quickly referring to the Corona bonds debate, we demand that Corona bonds are issued by the European Investment Bank with long duration, and then the ECB would buy them. So this concept of Corona bonds would also be, promising. And the third point is, of course, we have to organize European Union-wide taxation of wealth, of multimillionaires, of billionaires. And this is very, very, and a very important demand, because no other party, no other movement will bring this demand up. And we have to speak in Corona times, I think, also about issues which are not mentioned by other forces. And we see now that in times of crisis, people often refer to their governments and support their governments. I think this is very, questionable, but it's maybe a human, maybe we can explain it like maybe it's a human move, but I find it very problematic that, or we see that many people trust now in their governments, but I think now the time is over for only say everything's fine what the governments do. Now it's really the time that the left makes a difference in the crisis, in dealing with the crisis, and put demands which are which help the majority of the people. I think this is our task. And briefly referring to the third big demand, of course, and there the left is the only one which can make a difference. And this is upholding democracy, fundamental rights, and the rule of law. And in this regard, I just want to mention that when we talk about the measures now, we have ongoing in Germany, but also in other countries, they have to be proportionate, temporary, and they have to be subject to parliamentary scrutiny. Now it's really important, and we've seen what's going on in Hungary and other countries. So it's important that it's subject also to parliamentary scrutiny, and that all the surveillance measures, for example, which are now debated, are totally lawful, effective, and proportionate, and that they are ending after this crisis. And last but not least, I would say the fourth big pillar where the left is now putting forward demands, it's the pillar for protect public health. So this is also, of course, very striking. Last but not least, we as the European left, of course, our task is not only to formulate demands, but also to spread it and to make policies and to support movements. I mean, we all know that that policies are not made only in parliament, but we need the support on the street, which is obviously very difficult in Corona times. So this is also, I think, maybe to end in a positive way, to a big task for us to think now, how can we actually formulate, or how can we translate this mistrust and this also negative attitudes of many people regarding the European Union and its handling with the crisis? How can we use this and change this actually into a movement which is big on the streets, which would have also then, of course, a parliamentary effect, but which brings people now to think about the society where they want to live in after Corona. And I think I would say, actually, I would see left parties, this is also a very important task of left parties now, to think about the future and to think about the society we want to live in after Corona times. And our task now, concretely, and this is the last point I want to mention regarding this, Germany will take over the European Union presidency in July. Of course, this presidency will be more or less, I assume, but we're pretty sure that the presidency will have the main focus on dealing with the Corona crisis. But I would see also this event, which is a 6-month period, which is, of course, now a very institutionalized event, but still it's an opportunity for us leftists to also refer to the bad role of the German government when it comes to austerity policies and the driving force behind it, and also to formulate our left visions and left tasks to bring this into the public, to make public events and bring people on the streets. And this is something I think we as an LAG could also work on, and the whole leftist movement should also get involved.
Just for clarification, LAG is a Landesarbeitsgemeinschaft, a working group, which the group who organised this is a working group inside the party.
Yes, thanks.
And one last question to Dimitra before it opens the question. We've now got 2 questions, comments from public. Please press the add a question button to add more. And it's a similar one to, it actually follows on from what Judith has just been saying. And if you could just say what resistance is taking place in Greece, how the Greek left is responding. I read today that Yanis Varoufakis now says that he and his party are now the official opposition party in the Greek parliament, but also what extra parliamentary activity is at all possible in these times. So what's happening in terms of resistance inside Greece at the moment?
Well, yeah, this is very interesting. The resistance is taking, first of all, there is resistance in the social level. It would sound a surprise, but it's not. Even at the times where there was an official lockdown and people could not leave their homes without a very good reason that had to be authorized, there have been protests, and I have some photos that I would like to share you. This is from 7th April, World Day of Health. Health workers organized protests outside the hospitals, and there were also people, supporters to them, demanding more money for public health, more staff, and denouncing the government. And this was repeated on the 28th of April. After the success of that day, there were more protests, sending a very strong message to the government and to the society that it's the working class and the people in the hospitals who made the difference, and not those the politicians, the wise guys of the government. The slogans are absolutely clear. Clear. In one hospital, they even sent the special police units just for, but they didn't manage to intimidate people and make them give up. So if you want to organize, I would say there is a way. And all this culminated in the 1st of May, where although it was still inside the lockdown, there were thousands of people. There have been some photos that I was tempted, but I didn't send. The Communist Party of Greece organized a very well structured, like a military protest right there, with people standing still with 1.5 meter distances. For some people, it was impressive. So for some others, it was horrible. But such observations miss the point that on that day, it was not just the Communist Party of Greece, but also far left groups, immigrants. This is a very great picture of the Kerfa block of a Senegalese immigrant and some refugees who dared defy the rules that they had them locked inside the camps, because they organized, and they did it in an organized way. And that was the real strong message, that it's not that we are afraid and we're waiting that the government is going to get us out of the problem, because they won't. And this has after the 1st of May, that was really strong. It went on after the end of the official lockdown. So we have the artists that came on the 7th of May. That was a really, I like this very much, the Lorca picture, and it was a massive demonstration. There were very hard against the lies of the government. The teachers also against a very impatient reopening of the schools. And also, every day there was a protest in Greece, which brings us to what Judith said before, and that there is a way to come out and protest. And this brings us to why we need to fight the governments. With I think it's not a good idea that because there's COVID-19, we should in case support our governments because we have common goals. In the case of Greece, for example, the crisis, the refugee crisis in the Turkish borders, put the left into a test, where I have to say that I was not satisfied at all by Syriza, and neither by KKE. Both of them said that yeah, we have to expel them. What can we do? But because far right and fascist groups took advantage of the crisis, they just felt that they said, okay, we shouldn't make that. Tsipras himself said that, yeah, we also had to expel people, but we did it in a manner that we didn't attract the far right groups. And the Communist Party also spoke of non-symmetrical danger. So DM25, and I think it was more to the side of the people. At the time, they are acting more in parliament. They're not so strong in the trade unions. But for me, the message is that there is anger in the streets. There are people who are willing go out, and we need a strong political opposition. The left in Greece is not unified, but is there, despite its faults, can be a factor that can act, but only it has to stop waiting, but organize against the government. And this also is connected with the EU, because the government is speaking as a partner of the EU. So this can be has to be answered in politics. That those people do not express the will of the majority of the Greek society. I remember my last point, that in order to make the European Union attractive to the people, every government in the past had to tell to the Greek society that if we enter the EU, you're going to have standard of living that you never dreamt about. You're going to have schools, you're going to have hospitals, you're going to have public hospitals and so on. And these dreams are shattered, but the will to fight is there. And I think this is where the left should concentrate in the next time.
Okay, thank you, Bella, and thank you for the people who've sent questions and statements for your patience. We shall now go to what people... We've got 3 at the moment, very internationalist, one from Montenegro, one from Athens, and one from Toronto. Berliners are also encouraged to take part. I'll read them one at a time and ask you to respond before we go on to the next one. The first one, well, it's sort of a statement, but it's an implied question, which is, from where I'm sitting in Montenegro, the EU has been essential in helping Montenegro deal with COVID-19. Is there anything you'd like to say about this? Maybe you did this.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I mean, I assume that the person, the comrade, is maybe referring to, I don't know, medical support by the European Union, maybe also staff, people sending over there and help. I mean, this is out of question. I think if you are in a, let's say, union, this is evident that you should do this. So, okay, this is good to hear. Well, one thing comes to my mind now, actually, when you speak about Montenegro. This has nothing to do with COVID-19 now, but with, let's say, the European Union and the relation between your country. And what we've seen, I think last year for the first time with Albania, was that the European Union started stronger cooperation with countries, with third countries, not in the European Union, not yet, or well, not in the European Union at the moment, and start agreements with them regarding to the European border and Coast Guard cooperation. And this is something which is now also continuing with Montenegro. This week, actually, it will be in the plenary in the European Parliament. And it's basically about that the European Union makes some contracts, agreements with third countries to protect the border, to protect the external borders. So of course, we see this very critical because, they say they are fighting illegal immigration and they want to fight migration flows. This is often what they say. And now they do this with the help of third countries like Montenegro, like Albania. And they do this with the help of a bigger mandate, bigger mandate than ever of Frontex. I mean, there's a huge increase in terms of money and also in terms of staff. So I would argue that it's good that the European Union helps third countries fighting the crisis and fighting this very severe health pandemic. But they should rather give more money for these kind of things, for social developments, for ecological developments, and not for securing their fortress Europe, which we maybe the Montenegrin comrade can also underline this or support this. I don't know, but I'm very much against this approach by the European Union, which we can see with third countries also like Montenegro. So this would be another info I would add.
Yeah, I'd apologize for the format that we're having to do in these times, which means that discussion is suboptimal to some extent, but on the one hand, we do get to hear, which wouldn't be possible if we were all sat in a room in Berlin. There's just this follow-up from I presume it's Jason in Montenegro, who says, we're down to 4 cases in Montenegro. Yes, they're getting medical support and money. Without the EU, Putin would completely undermine democracy here with the help of Serb nationalists. If either of you want to say anything to that, please do. or if you want to think about it, we can move to the next question.
Mm.
And let's leave this percolating. Also, if anybody wants to make a comment in the add a question section, please do. We'll move to the question. Maybe we'll move back to this later. The next question is from Sylvia in Athens, who says, as Judith described, the EU has demanded that the EU states make big cuts from the health system in previous years. Parallel, in Greece, the plans of the neoliberal government to privatise parts of the hospital departments after this crisis, it seems that they will have to rethink under the massive pressure that the health service is vital that it remains. Is such a change visible in the EU? Now, that's something either Dimitra can talk from a Greek perspective or you did from a general EU perspective. Does either of you want to respond?
I would, but I can, if Dimitra wants to go first, or I have some things in mind. I would quickly start, Dimitra, if that's fine?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, it shows a bit, I think, let's say, how severe the crisis is, that if we, or in a situation where European Union elites and heads of states and government speak about the nationalization of, let's say, core sectors of society, which actually you would say it's rather a leftist demand, I think it shows how severe the crisis is. Well, as an development, of course, it's a good sign, but I would fear that it's rather, let's say, a short-term thing, which after the crisis won't be on the agenda. I could just I could just argue from what I've experienced, or how I would analyze the last month. And if you look what the European Union did, and in the dominant European Union discourse and debates now, it really disregards the devastating effects of austerity, the impacts of austerity, and also the impacts of the macroeconomic conditionalities many European Union measures had. Like, I just refer now, for example, to the European Parliament resolutions. There is no word which says austerity was a problem, we won't go back to normal. Of course, this would be like a big change. I'm not even thinking about that the European Union would do this, but I would just counteract the argument a bit in saying that I fear this won't happen, and and there are some good signs, of course. There's like a good sign, for example, that the Stability and Growth Pact is, let's say, they partly loosened it. But of course, we now have to fight for a situation in which it's permanently repealed, and in a situation for a situation that all the conditionalities, which really were really devastating for especially the Southern European countries, that they have to go, and that the European Union have to put in place policies which help the countries and don't make the countries fall into another euro crisis and big debts again. This is a bit my fear. And when we see good short-term things, I think we have to be careful, and we have to fight for a more radical, let's say, demands.
I would like to
Dimitra?
Yes, I don't know. What crossed my mind, though, is that indeed there has been a discussion about a strong state that is required from several politicians that in the past maybe were saying that, okay, too much state is inefficient and it gives out all the citizens' money and blah blah blah. And now it looks like the narrative is changing back, saying that if you don't have a serious state, everything is going to collapse. It's ironic in the sense that there were neoliberal people who used to speak against the state intervention. But what I would like to say, though, is that we are the EU is already into an economic crisis that is related to the COVID, but it was not caused by COVID. I don't have the time to get into it, but what we see in Athens, the stock exchange opened with a huge fall in the bonds, and we also states of we saw several companies, enterprises turning to the government saying, "Oh, the state has to support us because everything is going to collapse." The notorious example is the airlines, but now we're speaking about the national. It's not state, but it's national airline, the Aegean, which claims trillions, zillions in order not to fire thousands of people. So my comment on that is, what are we talking? If we're talking about state intervention, we should say yes, nationalize those companies who are going to be abandoned and everybody's going to be thrown outside. But we don't trust that those governments are going to do that. The point is that they will not nationalize it. They just pump more money into them to save the situation. And this is an impasse because I don't think that now they know really how to get out of this crisis and how big it will be. For Greece, the government says that we may get off with luckily with 7.5% fall in GDP, but everyone they are the only ones who say that, and everyone speaks for 10 to 15 fall in GDP. So I stop here because it's an immense question, but my point is that we are for a nationalization without giving money to the bosses, but to save jobs and save the people. Yeah.
Okay, we have a next question from Harry, who's currently in Toronto, for Judith. It says, you mentioned the problems in Hungary for working people and the new repressive laws, and you also left pressure on the EU to counteract such things. But to what extent do you think it's realistic the EU itself will take positions or even actions on a specific country?
Well, I would say that we've now actually seen that the European Union takes initiative regarding specific European Union countries, like, for example, when we speak about Orban's role and his really authoritarian, let's say, regime nowadays, we've seen that more and more the European Union is dealing with it, that it's part of some documents and some publications, let's say. But I'm also not very convinced, because it seems, of course, that the European Union also deals with specific states differently than others. When we speak about Hungary, for example, I don't think that on the one hand side, the Commission President von der Leyen and other European top, let's say, politicians, they fight Orban and say how bad the regime is, which is definitely the case. I mean, I have family in Budapest, and I hear about the crazy developments. And especially for alternative, for leftist people, for people organized in trade unions and other organizations, it's very, very bad. But there's a bit of double standards again, because on the one hand side, the politicians are complaining. On the other hand, the European People's Party, which used to be together with the Social Democrats, let's say the grand coalition, the big coalition in the European Parliament, the European People's Party still has Orban's party within its organization. So it's double standards on the one hand side to complain, on the other hand, and to say, okay, we will now proceed with the legal instruments against you. On the other hand, it's not fully convincing if then the party, the Christian Democrats, actually don't manage to throw him out. I mean, this is ridiculous. So I would say this is really the case. And another thing is, maybe referring to Orban and his regime, which is now very worsening in the COVID crisis, but before it was also very bad. That I remember like half a year ago when the different European commissioners, you know that each country has one commissioner for one specific portfolio, and they have to go to the European Parliament for their hearings. And actually that the Hungarian commissioner, I mean, he was rejected. And this doesn't happen very often. And he was rejected because he was too close to the Orban's regime. This was at least many MEPs said that this is a big problem. And so they had to find someone else. And now it's someone actually who's also, of course, within the Hungarian elites, but which try to play a more independent role, which is actually not the case. But we see that the Hungarian case actually, it's still ongoing on the European level. And I think that it's a bit double standards if the European Union is not consequent and is not dealing with it in a, let's say, a very broad way. I would argue as a first comment.
And can I add something on top of what you said? I think in the relationship between the EU and democracy, because also for some people it looks like they look to you to defend democracy, but in Poland also I think it's another case more pro-Europe, but we have an emerging Orban in the phase of PIS, which is also undemocratic. So my point is that it's not, Orban is one of the worst cases, but it's not the only one. We have local cases which are going to an undemocratic deviation. And this is one more challenge, one more inefficiency. So how will we cope with that and keep all this centrifugal, in diverse ways, centrifugal tensions also in orbit?
Before I bring up Tom's question about a guaranteed income, Jason in Montenegro has posted something which I think is relevant to this discussion. So maybe one of you would like to come on that, which says EU can implement Article 2 of this conditionality on Hungary and Poland. Is there anything you'd like to say about that, either of you?
Well, that's true, but let's see what they really do and if they proceed with the legal measures. I mean, it's been debated for a long time whether the European Union should be more strict and really and the rule of law. It's a really big issue. One other info I can give you is that the German government is very much putting forward the idea of a so-called rule of law traffic light. I mean, this is translated literally. I don't know how they would phrase it, but they want a rule of law check, which should be introduced. And well, this idea is now debated, but it should be introduced, or at least it was one idea for this year's European Union presidency to put it in place. And for autumn, actually, they expect to publish the proposal to more or less cluster and analyze the different member states of the European Union and their adherence to the rule of law. I don't have detailed information yet because the proposal is not yet out, but it's a hot debated issues, and I'm totally right that it's correct to follow the European Union states and to check what they are actually doing and whether they follow the let's say what they promised. On the other hand, I just wanted to underline again that the European Union itself should adhere to their rules and to their values, and often in different areas. I mean, I can now don't mention all of them, but if we speak about human rights, if we speak about let's say the social welfare and the wealth they are talking about in the European statutes and in the treaties, I mean, this is also a bit questionable whether actually the entity as such is is following what they want other countries and other states actually to do.
Okay, at the moment we have one question still from the public. If you'd like to say anything, ask anything else, or say anything else, please do. We do realize that the nature of the online meetings is that they're a bit more stressful than sat in the same room. So we'd like to finish sometime between 8:30 and 8:45, but there's still time to put a question or make a statement before we finish. Tom's question concerns Pablo Iglesias. He's the Socialist Deputy Prime Minister of Spain and a member of Podemos. And Tom asks, what do you think of Iglesias' call for a minimum income guarantee across the EU? Oh, and Tom is in Berlin. We have a contribution from Berlin. So would either of you like to respond?
What was the proposal? Can you please
The proposal
repeat
is from Pablo Iglesias that there is a minimum income guarantee across the EU.
Well, I think, as far as I know, it's a pretty recent proposal, not only by Spain, but also from France and Portugal. I think it's just some days old, so I'm not now. It's difficult to really comment because I don't know the details. But I think it's obvious that now with the Corona crisis, we need to think about ways to to help the workers and to ensure that that they survive the crisis and that they are that they see a future out of the crisis. I don't know whether this minimum income guarantee is a solution. Like, I assume that this would be just for the times of the crisis. There is something also what's called helicopter money, which was debated in the debates of Corona, where basically it says that all employees should, I don't know, it was often it was between 1,000 and 2,000 euros. They should all receive that money so that they can survive the crisis. I think it has good elements. On the other hand, when we talk about, let's say, guaranteed minimum income for everyone, just like no matter who you are, what's your background, and stuff, I find it a bit difficult. I mean, we have the debate in Germany. It's probably not the same as Tom mentions here, but of course, I'm for a minimum wage. I think this is necessary, and it's still ridiculous that Germany pays less than 12 euro or even more. So we are actually on a scale. Germany is really on the bottom. So I think a minimum wage, I'm directly, of course, in favor, and this is also the debate within left parties across Europe. When it comes to a minimum income, I think we need more debates, and we also have to see a bit. In my view, for the crisis times, it can be an instrument. For a longer term, I think it does not really resolve the contradictions between capital and labor. It's more, I would say, an instrument which might, as the debates I know, and we have it here, it might maybe also weaken some trade union structures. And I'm a bit, let's say, I'm a bit reluctant, but I need to check on the proposal which is made by Pablo Iglesias. I mean, he's now in the Spanish government, and let's say it's rather a progressive government. So I assume that that their proposals should be studied by us and should definitely be followed. When it comes to the, let's say, basic income for everyone, we've seen some models like in Finland. It was just last month they stopped testing period, and there actually they had pretty not so positive impacts, they said, because actually it didn't bring people out of unemployment, and it was not a help for a long-term solution. But we have to check the texts and the ideas.
Yeah, can I add something?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, in principle, I would say that the left cannot say no to measures which relieve the weak people, as Judith already said. My point on that is, what is this measure as standalone if it can contribute to ameliorating the crisis today? And I will be more specific. We know that I spoke before about the economic crisis, and we know that there are already workplaces that have been lost, have been layoffs, and there are many more to come. So close to this is the demand for jobs, not to because so far the governments are facilitating or just moderating what's going on. So I wouldn't say that it's not a good idea, but Judith is right to say that in which context that people lose their job and get 300 euros, in which basis and in which context, while the demand is to stop the redundancies. Or and one comment is that although the nature, the response to the crisis looks very different, because in the past there were attempts of another role of the state, like state investments, but we don't see that. We cannot turn the clock back to the New Deal eras where the state could play that role, and this is something that shows how capital has grown older, and some things cannot just be repeated, and this poses modern working class to new tasks. But this is, of course, another topic.
I would ask you, does either of you have any final words that you'd like to say? I've got a couple of announcements at the end, but then we can wrap up while people are still attentive. Do you have anything more to add?
I would add that I think now we've seen, let's say, the first measures coming from the governments tackling the crisis. Many things, as I said before, where now speaking from the German side, from the German perspective, of course we're in line with let's say the economic measures and the short-term measures. This is fine. Now I think there's the time to speak about the recovery plans, what's coming after the crisis, and this is also what's now what's the dominant debate on the European Union level. We've seen the big fights between countries, more or less the Nordic countries against the southern countries when it came to the Corona bonds. We will see whether this divide will continue. Now, the most prominent issue is this recovery plan. This week probably the European institutions will publish a plan, and I think then we need to debate more. What do they promise? What do they propose? And then we have to see, of course, whether it's enough money involved and who will pay for the crisis. I think this is the striking question, and there, for sure, the left will stand with the people, with the working class people, with the people who are, who are suffering a lot from this European Union policies. And, some promising things have been mentioned, what the European Union did, but I think now it's really the time to see whether we can use this crisis to to build another path forward, because now this neoliberal pretty anti-democratic and also a militaristic entity, I think this helped rather only some people and big corporations and companies. But it's of course sure that we as the left will continue fighting for the Europe of the people, which seems to be very abstract. But I think now in Corona times, we've seen the solidarity by the people, and we've seen also what's possible. So I would say, even though it's a very, very bad and severe situation, we should now look to the future with a more promising view and with a hope that well, it's a big task, but with a hope that the left actually managed to organize the working people, to organize the ones we might have lost during the last years, to build up a strong left movement fighting for the majority of the people. And I'm very happy that we have this working group here in Berlin, that we have all of you probably watching from different parts of Europe or even the world. And we should continue this way and have more debates on this topic. And we will very definitely follow what the European Union policies will do and what the left answers could be. Thanks very much from my side. Greetings from Brussels.
Thank you. Dimitra, do you have anything?
One word, if I understood well, the previous one previous question by the friend from Montenegro about Frontex being established in Montenegro, I will be very not rude, but very clear. It's not a good idea. Okay, so I understand how people try to defend democracy in countries where there are tensions, national tensions, and so on. But getting to be the guard, as Ursula von der Leyen said, of Europe by shooting immigrants, because this means the Frontex. I can speak from experience, because the Frontex have been in Greece since years. So it's not a humanitarian work. Believe me, in the end, they end up shooting immigrants or exposing them so that Erdogan's forces or Mitsotakis' forces is going to shoot them. So it's not a good idea. You're not going to guard European borders. Actually, you become the cubs of the elites of the European Union. So the answer is that in Greece, what the anti-racist movement says, get Frontex out of here, shut them down. And this is this is what I would like to say. As for the rest, I think that I stick to what I said before, that what we need now is a class struggle against the governments who are imposing those politics, even if they say the best words and the spreading fear because of COVID. I think that defying this and fighting against this, the only way to shake them down and get real change.
Okay, thank you for everybody for taking part in this discussion. It's not the easiest situations. Before you go, I'd like to invite people to the next meetings which we're organising. At the moment, we're organising meetings every 2 weeks on the second and fourth Monday of the month. In 2 weeks' time, we have a doctor who's working in Cuba and others who are talking about how Cuba has responded to the COVID crisis. After that, in June, we have people from Italy talking about how resistance has been possible in Italy, where there's been a number of strikes and things. And then at the end of June, we have speakers from Lebanon, from Sudan, and from Algeria talking about the new wave of Arab resistance 10 years after the Arab Spring. You can find all the information at the website, or you can send us your email. You can send your email in the Ask a Question button, and we'll add you to the mailing list. One last request: this has opened up discussions, not closed them down. We are very keen on people submitting articles for our website, particularly articles disagreeing with things we publish or things are said at the meetings. So if there's something you've heard, you want to either back it up or disagree with it, please send us an article and we will publish it so that the debate across the whole of the left is reflected in what we're putting out. I think that's the main thing from our side. Again, thank you everybody for taking part. If we've got any more information to convey, we'll do it via the website, the Facebook page, and via the mailing list. A particular thank you to Judith and Dimitra. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, yeah.